to do that.
Afternoon, everyone. Just give us a little bit. We are shaking out some technical difficulties and getting the meeting set up in the actual room. Testing 1, 2.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yep.
Awesome. Give us a second. We're testing the acoustics in the room to see if.
I have to go on to the web
Good.
for Teams.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brian Smith II, Transportation Planner with the Planning and Development Department and Staff Liaison for the Bicycle Advisory Committee. Today, we have the meeting of the Infrastructure Subcommittee. And you must bear with us for a little bit. You might hear an echo in a minute. We are working through some technical issues here in the John B. Ray Conference Room, but we're going to continue nonetheless. As a reminder, the mission of the BAC is to advise and make recommendations to the Commission and the Director on issues related to bicycling in the city, including, but not limited to, amendments to the bike plan, bicycle safety and education, implementation of the bike plan, development of strategies for funding projects related to bicycling, and promoting public participation in bicycling, with the vision that by 2027, the city of Houston will be a safer, more accessible, goal-level, bike-friendly city. And we'll start with the roll call. As a reminder, if you are joining us online as a part of the subcommittee, we do need to hear an audible yes, and keep your camera on when speaking. We'll pause real quick just to see if we've got the audio back before roll call. Okay, well, audio is still disabled, so we're just gonna keep going. So starting with the chair, Joe Catrufo. BAC chair, Tom Thompson.
I'm here.
Right, got you. Vice chair, Alejandro Perez. Leah Chambers.
Present.
Lisa Griff.
Present.
Right, got you, Leah and Lisa. Trevor Reichman. Present. Jessica Wiggins. Yahaina Mahmoud. Ben Drews.
Here.
Right. Amar Mohite.
Present.
Mike Van Dusen.
Here.
Right. Ana Ramirez Huerta. Robin Holzer. And our ex officio members from Houston Public Works, Ian Lavacek.
I am here.
Right. From Planning and Development, Monique Johnson.
Present.
And from Parks and Recreation, Patrick Fortiori. All right, Chair Catrufo, we have 8 of 13 members of the subcommittee, members of the subcommittee present. So we do have over 50%. Would you like to proceed?
Let's proceed.
So as a reminder, our agenda and our slides are found online at houstonbikeplan.org/BAC. If you are joining us by team and you do get cut off, there is an opportunity to join by phone by dialing 936-755-1521 with the ID of 435-986-680. And always remember to stay on mute unless you're identified by the chair to speak. If you do wish to speak, give public comments or any other kind of commentary, please put something in the chat first so we can call upon everybody in order. And if you are connecting through the phone, if you need to mute or unmute, all you have to do is press *6. And for our agenda, we'll start with directors and chairs reports, public comments. We do have some updates to our infrastructure design manual that was recently passed, so Houston Public Works will share that. I'll give some updates about maintenance and bikeway sweeping, and then we have two presentations from Brian Dotson. One is a request for the strategic bikeways funds for 2 projects, and then the second is a post appraisal of Shepherd Durham. And then we'll close with open forum and announcements and events. And as a reminder, the public is invited to speak for up to 2 minutes each at the beginning of the meeting during public comment. We'll begin with the director's report.
Good afternoon.
Also, just making the announcement that Vice Chair Alejandro Perez has just walked in. So we're counting him for attendance. Dick Jubo, chair reports.
It's a new year, it's a new administration, and since this body was formed, the Bicycle Advisory Committee, we've seen Houston slowly transform into a city where people have more options, where people can get around safely by bike in more places than they could a few years ago. I think most people in this committee would agree that that's a good thing. I think a lot of Houstonians would agree that that's a good thing. We've seen the numbers in recent polls. 52% of Houstonians wish they could ride a bike more often than they currently do. That's 2020 from the Kinder Houston area survey. And that's before the pandemic bike boom and all that. We've seen that more recent numbers show that 17%, according to the University of Houston polling, 17% of Houstonians strongly support more on-street bike infrastructure, 24% somewhat supported. By my math, that's about 40% of Houstonians that want to see more on-street bike infrastructure. And that's not a majority, but I think in conversations we've probably all had with people who bike or who don't bike, there's also a preference for off-street infrastructure. There's no polling to show that more people want to see off-street bike infrastructure, but if you look at the election results for the Bayou Greenways over a decade ago, 68% of Houstonians support things like Bayou Greenways. So there's a majority out there of people who want to see continued change, whether on street or off, that makes it possible for more people to get around safely, regardless of what mode they use. And there's a lot of other reasons to invest in infrastructure. And this is something we discuss in this subcommittee all the time. The importance of the infrastructure that makes it easier for people to get around. When you consider the cost of owning a car, $12,000 a year, according to AAA, that's $1,000 a month. That's rent for some people. And beyond that, we have a number of other challenges in this city that come up as top concerns, regardless of what year it is. People are always complaining about congestion. What if a bike can help you opt out of that congestion? We know that half of the trips made in this country are 3 miles or less. 40% of the trips in this country are 2 miles or less. 28% of the trips made in this country are less than a mile, but 2/3 of those trips are made in a car. So what does that say about our infrastructure? Is that it doesn't support multiple modes in most places. And we're making progress on that in Houston, and that's something to be proud of. And we can't take too much credit for that. The people around this table, the people in the Bicycle Advisory Committee, we shouldn't try to take too much credit for that because, we're not the ones funding this work. We're often not the ones who are, going to bat trying to get this work to happen, but we merely advise. We serve a purpose for the planning staff and for the commission to be eyes and ears and not much else. So we need to continue to remember what our role is and where we can be useful as a committee in making sure that the city has the resources they need. I don't mean monetary resources, but the sort of eyes and ears resources, the information they need to make good decisions about multimodal transportation. Because if there's any reason to do that beyond, say, the environmental reasons, the health reasons, the economic reasons, it's what the people want. We're actually pretty short on data beyond what I listed. We know how many people put their bikes on the front of metro buses. We have Strava data, which is really flawed because it doesn't show where people are riding bikes, but where people are using Strava on their bikes. We also have a little bit of data from permanent counters that HGAC and TxDOT have planted in different places around the city. And then we have Houston Parks Board who use temporary counters that measure ridership in certain parts of the Greenway network. We need to do more. And in conversations with this administration, it sounds like there's a real appetite for more hard data about ridership. And with modern technology, I think we need to broaden what our definition of infrastructure is, because there's stuff out there that Houston's not using that other metro areas are. That's camera data, anonymized, takes out people's recognizable faces, but the kind of information that we're lacking both on street and off, that could help us in future prioritization exercises, could help us with the implementation of the bike plan, could help us understand where there's a need and where there's demand for bikeways and that sort of thing. One other thing I want to talk about is maintenance, something that comes up a lot at the BAC, something as an advocate I hear a lot about. We've made progress in recent years, and we've discussed this ad nauseum, maybe, the need to get broken glass and debris and all that kind of stuff out of the bikeways, little bits of remnants from car crashes, sometimes large bits. I once came across the entire front end of a Honda on McKee Street. But as we've discussed in this forum, and as staff has come up with a maintenance plan, and council members stuck their neck out to get a narrow street sweeper. I'm really looking forward to Brian's update later in the agenda about maintenance. And I want to recognize the work that planning staff have done. And I want to give them a tailwind to do, to provide more maintenance of our bikeways. I sat down with a city council member recently who doesn't necessarily use the bikeways, but expressed some concern that they may be less safe because of the debris piling up in them. And I think I agree when I hear that it's a bit of a black eye on the city, that we spend a lot of money on this infrastructure, but we don't do as well as we can in maintaining it. So to whatever degree the BAC and this subcommittee can help marshal the resources to or create an environment in which we get more better maintenance. Maybe it's another sweeper. Maybe it's, I think it's less than ideal that Houston Public Works staff, and I give them a lot of credit for this, have to sweep manually sometimes before the sweeper goes through to get some of that heavy debris out. This is an area that doesn't require a huge amount of investment, and it doesn't require a whole lot of political will to maintain something that we've already built. Of course, you don't get to do a ribbon cutting or sweeping a bikeway, but I think in the spirit of fiscal responsibility and of taking care of our city and our infrastructure, it's the right thing to do. And I'll end by saying we can't be a great city if we don't take care of our infrastructure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're still going through it with the main screen, but we are going to continue. So just as a warning, if you hear a quick echo, it's because we did get the sound back on in the room proper. But now we're going to proceed with public comment. As a reminder, written comments need to come to the BAC email address, bac@houstontx.gov by 5 p.m. the day before the BAC meeting. And if you get them before 5, they will be read aloud by staff. You can also comment by phone or via Microsoft Teams if you are joining us online. Just make sure that you type your name and say that you would like to give a comment. We're going to start with some written comments. So in the BAC inbox, we did receive several emails and several written comments in support of the projects that Brian Dotson is going to be presenting on later during the meeting. For brevity's sake, a lot of the messages did say, that we may compile their support into a total count in lieu of reading aloud. And I'll also give the caveat that some people did send additional letters of support after the 5 p.m. deadline. So for the sake of the conversation, I'm going to give you all 2 numbers. So the first number that I'm going to give right now are going to be what we received as part of the public comment period. But during Brian Dotson's presentation, I'll give the cumulative number of emails and letters that we've received so far, just so that the overall number is shown to the subcommittee. So in regards to the Piping Rock connection presentation, we received 2 emails, written comments before the public comment deadline. They both said that we can compile their support into a total count. But to give an example, I will read one just to show the support. So Randall Bacon says, I support the Piping Rock connection. I live near Barker Reservoir and support this project. You may compile my support into a total count in lieu of reading it aloud. Thank you. And then I also do have copies that I can provide to the chair and the subcommittee after the meeting because I only got one printed copy here. And then also for the Cullen Park Public Use Path, we received 8 comments before the public comment deadline. And I'm going to read the one that has the most detail and is most comprehensive of all of the other ones received. This comes from Todd Ward. As a longtime 28-year resident of West Houston, unincorporated Harris County, I strongly support this initiative. Safe and easy access to George Bush Park and Terry Hershey Park trail system is a dream come true for myself and avid bicyclists and trail users from the north side of the Katy Freeway to the south. You may use my name in support of the proposed project. And there are 7 other letters that we received before the deadline that have similar language, also with the request that we can, for brevity's sake, compile all of their numbers into one report. So now we will go forward with the public comments for people here and also online. So I have in order Marion Wright, Judith, who's joining us online. Marion Wright is here, and Ed Pettit, who is here in the room. So Ms. Wright, starting with you.
Is it okay if I sit here? You said that I need to be closer. Should I get
I
closer?
can move the computer.
It's not a problem. Okay. So let me first say that today was the nicest that I've heard Mr. Cafuto be as far as including everybody and recognizing that maybe we need to change strategies just a little bit. Off-street bike lanes are something that I think a majority of the community can support. If anyone listened to the mayor today, he made it pretty clear that we're not going to strangle streets anymore with putting bike lanes and taking away center turn lanes and doing these road diets. You can listen to it yourself. We have some problems with some of the infrastructure that's already been done, and I'm going to point to an island that y'all have that was installed at White Oak in Mishaw. On that island, since May 19th, the signs have been hit and knocked down 7 different times. May 19th, July 15th, September 19th, October 13th, October 31st, February 9th, February 20th. In a conversation that I had with Mario Costella, our council member, whose district it's in, he flat out said, someone is going to get killed standing on that island if it is hit when they're there. They have islands in the middle of streets that are dangerous, and we continue to tell people that that's okay. We have protected, semi-protected bike lanes, and we continue to tell people it's okay to put their kids on that it's a level 1 because it's a protected bike lane. A level 1 bike lane should not be a semi-protected bike lane. That's dangerous, and it's going to cause someone to get killed. Moving forward, I highly suggest that the Bike Advisory Council doesn't sit in an echo chamber and allows other people to serve that can give other points of views because y'all really need it. Thank you.
All right, next we have Judith. Judith, I only seen your first name on the meeting chat, so when you begin to speak, please share your first and last name.
Will do. Hi. My name is Judith McLaughlin. I am a director of a community organization known as One Creek West. Our service areas here is north of I-10 and west of Highway 6, and I'm here to talk about the Cullen Park Path. Our organization has about 30 neighborhoods in this coalition in this area we talked about, all of which share the same goals of making our community safe and a nice place to live. I'm both a cyclist and a community advocate, and I'd like to offer my strong support for the segment of the Cullen Park Path. There's many of us, including Todd, who's a neighbor of mine, who use the South Park View and Barker Cypress route from Cullen Park to get to the trails on the south side of 10. And this segment that's being proposed by Brian completes the connection, offering a safe and defined path to make the journey. Just in terms of metrics, with the current trail system in place, which is mostly off-road, the completed Cullen Park path will give about 1,800 homes in 4 neighborhoods the ability to connect with Cullen Park to I-10 without having to ride on a major roadway. There are another 5 apartment complexes along Greenhouse Road who will also have such access. So it has a meaningful impact for our population. However, the county is also planning to build additional sidewalks in our area. And when this is done, that will add another 1,600 homes into the benefit of the Cullen Park path. We believe that this investment will make our community a nicer place to live. It gives many of the residents in the connected neighborhoods the advantage of the extended trails on the south side of I-10, which are absolutely great, but we also have great trails on our side, so there's a benefit on both sides. Okay, so we hope you support this project, and thanks for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. In 2 minutes. Next, here in person, we have Mr. Ed Pettit. I'd like to I can walk over to you. Get some steps in.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ed Pettit, exchange program, and I'm proud to report that last week he learned to ride a bike and a scooter for the first time. And we came here today all the way on our bike lanes. I wanted to give a couple quick updates. Last weekend, we had a successful partnership with Tour de Hood and East Downtown Bike Co. for our 3rd annual Black History Month bike ride. We also are in advanced conversations with Houston Southeast Management District on maintenance for lights that are a long time coming along the Columbia Tap Trail. So hopefully Public Works now has no more excuses or hoops for us to jump through. And on March 16th, we'll be hosting our 3rd annual Third Ward on Tap Festival, which celebrates the Columbia Tap Trail and its multimodal connections and environmental sustainability. Lastly, I want to say, as much as I'm frustrated about the amount of tax dollars that's being wasted on ripping up infrastructure, I'm even more frustrated that we continue to do projects without proper or even minimal community engagement. I'd like to draw everyone's attention to Metro's Boost 54 upgrades. That's the first reason I came to these BAC meetings 5 years ago. And 5 years later, we still have not had proper information from Metro about these Boost 54 upgrades. I've asked for a simple site plan. I've asked for a simple cross-section. And this is a project the community wants. The community wants bike infrastructure on McGowan, and we're still not getting communication from Metro. They said last week the project was on pause. A few days later, they ripped up landscaping at Trinity East United Methodist Church. The pastor, everyone was caught off guard. So we're repeating the same mistakes as before, and it needs to change.
2 minutes. Thank you. All right, up next, we do have Ricky Cardenas. He is online.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for allowing me to speak and give a couple comments to the Bike Advocacy Committee here. I just wanted to point out I'm a commuter. I have access to a car, but I mainly use my bicycle to get around, especially to and from work. So I'm pretty much a heavy commuter. And I just wanted to point out we're getting ready to get our few weeks of good weather here in Houston before we get 100-degree summers. And the trails, the off-street paths are going to get more crowded. I find myself, kind of competing with space for people, with people using the trail for recreational purposes. And, I'm over here trying to commute as well as, other commuters that I've seen on the trail. So I just wanted to point out, there is a need for off-trail, basically on-street or near-street bike paths for people who are commuting as well as for people who use these paths for recreation. But if you're on the trails, please slow down. If you're commuting, if you're riding your bike, please slow down. If you see a family, if you see someone walking, someone running, don't try to split in between walkers. I see a lot of people trying to ride their bikes quickly in between walkers, and I've had an accident with someone who was trying to do that unsafely. Yeah, so I just wanted to, again, point out, be careful out there. The weather's going to start getting good, and those bayou trails and off-street trails are going to get packed. And we do absolutely need on-street protected bikeways. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, we have online Greg Nady, and then after Greg, we have Marcelo Escalera, who is here in the meeting.
All right, thank you. So I just wanted to say a couple things about the Piping Rock and Cullen Park projects that are on the agenda. I did send an email in, but it was beyond the 5 p.m. deadline. But just a little context for everybody, if you're not familiar with that area. The Piping Rock connection, it's about a 1.2 mile trail that would connect all of the Terry Hershey, George Bush Park, Mason Creek, Cullen Park trails to the Brays Bayou trails. So a lot of good work's been done by the old Precinct 3 and the current Precinct 4 and the Houston Parks Board, kind of upstream and downstream of Piping Rock, if you will. I think, I don't know how long that Brays trail is going to be, but I'm going to guess at least 15 miles. And there's probably 20 miles or more of trails in between Bush Park and Terry Hershey. So that 1 mile link is going to connect all that stuff together. It's going to create a safe 21-mile bike loop in West Houston, basically through the West Chase area, Terry Hershey, George Bush, and Brays Bayou. Once the Spring Branch Management District finishes their trail, all of this stuff would be connected in a massive 57-mile, I'll call it a mega bike loop, around the west, all the way from downtown Houston to West Houston. This Piping Rock connection will create a commuter bikeway to both the Energy Corridor District and the West Chase District, which are both pretty significant employment centers. And so that's it for Piping Rock. I'm all for it. The other thing I'll say,
Nady,
yeah.
This 2 minutes, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And now we have Marcelo here in person.
Well, hello, hola a todos. Hello, everyone. I am Marcelo Gari Escaldera. I am from Bolivia. I'm so glad to say that I'm here seeing sponsored by the U.S. Department of State and engagement and exchange. And I'm already working here with Friends of Columbia TAP, which is a nonprofit and also a neighborhood organization, which is trying to get involved the community in biking and also environmental activities. In this case, I'm just wanted to approach this time to say that as a visitor of this city, which is so beautiful, I have to say, it's so beautiful. I would like to see more improvements on these kind of particular situations like is biking, because when I traveled by the first time to United States, I thought that this will be a city with many improvements in biking on top trails, but I'm so sad to not see. But I think that you can do it better, and you can do also more things in order to improve this kind of activities for all the population. So I'm here to support you. I'll be here for 3 months, and I'm so happy to be here and to connect with all the people. We are doing these amazing activities, and I just want to be a supportive person for you, for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also want to acknowledge Keith Hardy's written comments in the chat. Speak, but I would like to provide the following public comment. I strongly support Brian Dotson's recommendations, and I urge the committee to recommend building the entire bike plan. I bike to work and for most of my transportation needs. I do not have access to a car and urgently need safe bike infrastructure, including on-street and off-street paths. And I also would like to acknowledge, I think it was Leah who added in the comment period, added in the chat, where can we find the mayor's comments from earlier today? I believe if it was during public session, it was the same way that how we, take note of all of our meetings and minutes and videotape it. HTV will be doing that as well. So give them a little bit of time. Usually it's about a 24 to 48 hour, depending on.
Session from yesterday, and then you go down to where it says mayor's like advice or something, or whatever, mayor's comments, it's there.
All right, so it's already up. So I think that is all for the public comments that we see in the chat, and here in the room. Should we continue?
Let's continue.
Amar has his hand raised. I don't know if anybody saw that in the.
Just one comment. Can you repeat the location where the mayor's comments are posted? The voice was not clear. Thank you.
We can send an email out because it's probably on the HTV website, right? It'll be on the HTV website, and then and we'll send it out.
Thank you.
All right, I think it's my turn. Is that right?
Go for it.
Okay. For those that don't know me, my name is Virginia Lynn. I'm a senior staff analyst in multimodal safety and design in Houston Public Works. And I am here to present on our bicycle facility infrastructure design manual 2023 updates. So I think we have a lot of varied level of knowledge here for everyone that's in attendance. So I'm going to do a little bit of background on what the infrastructure design manual is first, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what the updates were. So the IDM, as I'm going to refer to it for the rest of this presentation, is the design guide that the city uses to design many features, but specifically for us, our roadways. So it covers roadway geometry. It kind of covers the what. The design specifications cover the how, and the standard details are those engineering drawings that give you the really specific layouts and pieces of design information that engineers need to make designs. We have a 5-year review cycle for the IDM at the City of Houston. And so that means that every chapter in the IDM gets reviewed once every 5 years. We are in year 5 of the current review cycle, which included traffic and signal design in Chapter 15, communication facilities in Chapter 16, pedestrian bike transit, which we'll look heavily into today in Chapter 17, and encouragement requirements in Chapter 18. We also update those construction specifications and standard details at the same time when we do this review cycle. So it's the IDM language plus these kind of 2 corollary documents. We've been working on this for quite a while. We started drafting language for these IDM updates in the summer of 21. We spent about a year working on the initial draft of the language for Chapter 15 and 17, which is what our team heavily worked on. But then it went through a public review cycle that both included any members of the public can review this document, but also there are, and on the next slide you'll see, there are specific partners, various engineers in the community, entities that take a very close look and sit on a committee to review those documents. So that public review process went through to March 2023, to July 2023, and then final revisions were made between July and November 2023 to get to the updated version that was released in November of 2023. These updated designs were effective as of November 27th, 2023. So anything, so for the larger projects, anything that's 60% was submitted after that, they have to follow these designs. And then again, for any other public-private sector plans or plats and easements, anything submitted after that date has to match these design standards. These are a number of the external review members, so it is not something that is done yeah, it is something that is done very publicly and with many partners in the community. And lastly, if you want to see, there are the red line versions. So not only is there the updated IDM, but there are the red line versions where you can see every single markout that was made, every single text that was changed, a typo fixed, anything like that. There is a version, it is very long, that goes through all of that. So now I'm going to dig into the few changes that specifically relate to bicycle facilities in Chapter 15. And then later for the most of the presentation, we'll be going through 17, which is all the bike requirements in particular. But we did make some really important traffic and signal design requirement updates. The first of which being our multimodal service standards. So I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with the traffic impact analysis process, but TIAs are how developers, when they are going to be adding many trips to a location, to a project development, this is the process you have to go through to basically update the street to respond to that increase in trips. So that this is a large scale development. Let's say you're adding more than 1,000 trips per hour to that development. We have a high standard of what you have to do to change the street to be able to account for that, and to expand out from the development to maybe intersections you're going to impact half a mile away. That might be the way that you access your development. So historically, this has involved adding things like a new driveway location, turn bays, changing signal, changing things at signalized intersections, things like that. What we have expanded it to include is our multimodal service standards. So what you can see here, I've highlighted categories, TIA categories 2, 3 and higher, and then our large scale capital roadway projects, because now what we're saying for all of these, that you will be expected to do some multimodal improvements as well as just doing kind of your standard turn lane configuration or something. So there's a table for this. And again, all this is in the IDM, and I'd be happy to answer questions afterwards about the details of this. But this is the most important information for this infrastructure subcommittee, which is that for development projects, TIAs 2 and up, and for capital projects, you can see here in these columns what we expect you to do to respond to building bicycle infrastructure in particular. Because if you're going to be adding a significant number of trips generating towards your location, we expect that some of those will be made on bike. And so we are using this as an opportunity to make sure we are providing safe infrastructure for all road users. And so these are the particular requirements for bicycle facilities at intersections, along corridors, and at signals. Pause for a moment for any specific questions here. I'll keep going. We can always come back to anything at the end. And we are going to be digging into this a lot, such that we are having a specific training webinar. This is new for a lot of people, including us. And so we'll be hosting a webinar so that we can answer questions from the development community and others on this. So if you are interested, you are welcome to register. We'll be digging into that process. And it includes many more multimodal service standards than just for people using bikes. I just highlighted that for today. So that'll be in that webinar. Another update we've made is we have very clearly iterated that all traffic control plans, so this means during construction that impacts a roadway, that's where a traffic control plan comes into play, and it tells you how detours should be made, that they shall be provided for pedestrians and for bicyclists whenever a dedicated facility is closed. There were ways that language was in there before, but we've made it very clear now. And then Chapter 17, we dig into a little bit more of the how on those detour plans. So we'll cover this more later, but it is made very clear in Chapter 15 that that is a requirement. And then lastly, in 15, there's a couple updates regarding leading bike intervals. So for those that are not familiar, a leading bike interval is a signal operation style that gives people on bikes a head start. So you get a green signal before the people in the vehicle lanes get a green signal. This allows you to safely enter the intersection and be visible before maybe you would have a right turning vehicle not notice that you were there. This is paired with a no right on red so that it makes sure that the people on bikes have a chance to enter the intersection first and be very visible. This is now expected. I notice I highlighted the word shall and should in these cases. So bicycle signal heads shall be installed on all high comfort facilities. Leading bike interval should be installed wherever conflict exists between bicycles and turning vehicles. And specifically wherever a leading bike interval is utilized, a leading pedestrian interval shall be utilized as well. But there's no reason to separate the leading bike and the leading ped interval. So now I'm going to go into chapter 17, and just for those in the room that are the kind of people that like to see stuff on paper, I did print out one copy of chapter 17, so we can look at it for those here, but of course it's all available online at the Permitting Center's website, the 2023 IDM, it's all in there. Section 4 of chapter 17 is what we're going to focus on mostly, which is where the bikeway facility requirements are, but there are a couple other sections that I'm going to go into. Starting with section 1, which is an overview. I'm only pulling this out to say, these are all the words that we have added definitions for in our infrastructure design manual. This is to say that we have really spent an extraordinary amount of time making sure that we are being very clear about the treatments that are necessary, the purpose of them, and really like delving into them. These words were not defined previously and were not generally included in the IDM previously, and there's a lot of really good stuff in there. In section 2, this is where I was mentioning about traffic control plans before. So we have language that states a temporary traffic control plan must be provided for all pedestrian and bicyclists that are impacted or obstructed. And this is the key part of it, which are the order of operations that you determine how that traffic control plan is done. So you can see here very clearly that option 1, the first and most preferred thing that you should do as part of providing detours and doing traffic control plans is maintain existing path and protect the users in it. So we've made it very clear in the IDM that the first thing you should look and see if you can do is keep people walking on the sidewalk, but protect them there. Keep people in their bike lane, but protect them there. If we can not detour people out of their way and out of their preferred path, that is what we should do. The second option is to provide a nearby diversion. So you can provide this temporary pedestrian and bicyclist diversion. This could include protecting a facility and going on street, right? We've seen examples in the city where we use water-filled barriers and we use some on-street space directly adjacent to the previous path that you can kind of use and go right around. So that's a diversion is what we're calling it, not a detour. And then that third option is you provide the full detour. So that's your sidewalk is closed. You have to cross to the other side of the intersection. You have to go down the street. You have to cross back. That's still, of course, something that's going to happen sometimes, but we've made it very clear that that is option number 3, and that we'd rather see vulnerable road users protected in place, provided a nearby diversion, and then lastly, that offsite detour. And now we'll get into all the nitty-gritty of the new bikeway facility requirements. So these are fun. So you guys may remember this flow chart. We have removed this flow chart from the IDM and updated it. So I'm just highlighting here that this was the previous flow chart for determining the type of bicycle facility to design. This flow chart includes standard bike lanes. It focuses on traffic volumes of less than 3,000 a day for kind of neighborhood style bikeways. Those are those without dedicated facilities. And then it either focuses on design speed of greater than 35 miles per hour for kind of those separated pulling off street bicycle facilities, or less than 30 miles per hour for the neighborhood or for the standard bike lanes and things. You'll see what we've changed it to. We've kind of made quite a dramatic change, and it might be hard to see again. So it's printed off here and then also available online. I recommend you pull it up and zoom in because it might be hard to see in this presentation. But we've really reworked it to reflect how bicycle facilities have been constructed in the city. So we found that that previous flow chart was kind of an ideal scenario, and it always imagined that you might be able to rebuild the street to get that off-street facility that you might need. But we know that's not the case. Roadway improvement projects are often not full reconstructions, but instead retrofits, lower cost treatments to get the safety improvements we need. So it really, this facility type, that's the question that you start with is, are you rebuilding or are you doing a retrofit? And then you go from there to determine what style of bicycle infrastructure is appropriate. Then, as I called out before, those kind of volumes you see, we've now changed it to, can it be designed for under 2,000? So does it either currently have, or can it be designed for less than 2,000 vehicles per day? And then the design speed is, we're thinking about our observed speeds, sorry, not design speeds, 25 miles per hour or higher. So we really want to see speeds of 25 miles per hour or less for those where we have shared on-street configurations. So those neighborhood bikeway style treatments. And then we will dig into it more, but you can see that the type of facilities that are highlighted here, the only ones we are highlighting are dedicated bike paths, protected bike lanes, shared use paths, neighborhood bikeways, and raised bike lanes. And in fact, on the next slide, I think, yep, I have a lovely graphic here. And this is what we're focusing on. So you'll notice what is not on there is a standard bike lane. That is not in the infrastructure design manual as something that we give guidance on, and it's not something that you would select using the flow chart to decide the type of facility. But certainly neighborhood bikeways where we see slow speeds and we can have other speed calming measures paired with it. We can see just a shared street configuration, but then anything after that is going to see either a physical barrier or a like geographical barrier, right? That you separate yourself in space off to the off street, like in a shared use path example. And this is just another graphic to show you what those look like in a 3D environment. We do call out the bidirectional versus the single lane for those protected bicycle facilities. At intersections, we have added guidance on doing protected intersections, and that protected intersections are going to be the preferred treatment at intersections. Protected intersections being when you are able to pull the bicycle facility further off street at the intersection, closer to where like those curb ramps are for pedestrians, so that you have greater space and greater visibility of those vulnerable road users where they're at the intersection. We have both a rebuild and a retrofit style protected intersection shown in the IDM. We have also added new standards for bicycle parking, that bicycle facility design should include bicycle parking. Oh, it hasn't updated up there yet. Hopefully y'all are seeing. There it goes. Yeah, bike parking should be included. Actually, the language is shall, sorry for misspeaking, shall be included in design of bicycle facilities, but we did include where feasible because some have tight right-of-way constraints. And so including bike parking might be difficult. However, we did also include some guidance for bicycle corrals, which you could use at intersections. So even if the right-of-way is tight, you would have this opportunity in the area where it is not permitted to park near intersections. So that's 20 feet within an intersection, that you could include bicycle corrals, which also improves safety for pedestrians because it improves visibility of pedestrians attempting to cross the street. We've also included new wayfinding standards. So you guys may be very familiar with the Houston Bikeways sign. That was something that was being incorporated in most high comfort bikeways project, but it wasn't a requirement. This is now the standard for high comfort facilities, that this is the wayfinding signage. And we've added guidance to use this additional sign on the bottom here, this MUTCD D13C sign that shows location and distance as well as an add-on to this Houston Bikeways signage. And lastly, we have included, not only do we have this guidance in the IDM here of what varieties of bus stops on high comfort bicycle facilities can look like. So these are our different types of floating bus stops that we see. But we've also created a standard detail, which is a really important part of that, so that as designers are including these, they have a standard detail to go by and not just these lovely images. And I think that's everything. But happy to take questions.
Thank you. That's incredibly detailed. We just got these slides today, but I look forward to.
That's my fault.
Oh no. I look forward to really diving into details, because it's really some of the nuances that y'all address that make the difference between life and death in areas such as the leading bicycle intervals and addressing the detailed problems.
Mm-hmm.
Really incredible.
Yeah, so the bike corrals, so those will be implemented like at 20 feet from an intersection, right? Is that
Yeah.
only the requirement, I mean, because if I remember correctly from driver's course or whatever, like no car should be parked between 20 foot anyways, right? Okay,
Correct.
great.
And you
So-
can, the standard is there, they can be implemented elsewhere.
Mhm.
That's just a way where you can kind of get more bang for your buck in implementing them, because you get that safety improvement from visibility as well as additional bike parking.
Okay, yeah, I like that idea, because, I mean, some people don't know the laws and still put their cars there, so following the rack or the corral there, it's a great opportunity to like kind of leave that space open so people can look at intersections.
We have a couple in the chat. Right.
So let's see, Mike has his hand up, and then Tom.
Yes, my question really kind of regards the TIA. I've looked through several of the TIs in the past and noticed that one of the nice features is they do a lot of level of service counts. Are they doing that now for active infrastructure, active participants in the, on the roadway, like for bikes and ped?
We have not. So one change that we did make is we have updated the language from level of service to vehicle level of service, and they will still be getting those counts, of course, as part of the TIA process. We did not make a requirement for doing a multimodal specific level of service, so getting those counts in particular, but we are focusing on the infrastructure itself based on the plans that exist. So like the bike plan and our kind of baseline minimum curb ramp standards, bus stop standards, all those sorts of things. So no, we are not adding that requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a question regarding the detours for where bikeways are blocked. So this is all prospective, I guess, and it began in November. Is that when all these things took effect?
Yes.
Okay, I'm familiar with a project on Braze Bayou. It's the Spur 5 project that TxDOT is working on, and it will be blocking Braze or they say it's going to, they haven't yet. I assume it would also apply to that. I mean, is the Braze Bayou Greenway, that's owned by the city, right?
If somebody else in this room has that answer, that is not something I'm an expert on. So the IDM generally applies to, for roadway projects, applies to city right of way. And so I would need somebody else to help me interpret if Braze Bayou is considered city right of way.
Yeah, I don't know, because I think, yeah, the ownership of the land varies depending on where you are along the bayou. Sometimes it's flood control, sometimes it's adjoining landowners, but I thought Parks and Recreation owned the trails. I could be wrong on that. Maybe someone else can answer that question. Amar, do you know?
This is Lisa Griff with Houston Parks Board. The trail is an asset of the city of Houston, and in the Parks and Recreation Department, it would not, the IDM is for street right-of-ways, so it does not apply to those trails specifically.
Okay, it doesn't apply to off-street trails, just to on-street bikeways.
It would apply when the off-street crosses streets.
Okay, thanks, Lisa.
Or for off streets that are within the city right of way, like Bagapee Street downtown.
Yes.
For example.
Okay.
Adjacent to the, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, just to add on to the question that Tom just asked, how do the off-street stuff gets reviewed and permitted by the city of Houston? Because I think so that's where potentially the best practices could apply, because these are I think so this is great work by Virginia Web Public Works in publishing this document. This is really helpful to improve safety within the community. I think so it may be a good conversation to think through as to where this makes sense to apply on all city projects. What is the appropriate process for, so the work is already done, and I think so it's just trying to figure out the process part of it.
Virginia, I want to ask you if you could talk a little bit about the inspiration or the basis for where the idea come from. I'm guessing this doesn't exist in a Houston specific vacuum, but there's probably manuals beyond this.
Yeah, so especially when it comes, did everyone on the call hear that? Is the mic coming from here for this? Okay.
Still come from my laptop.
So the question was asked, what is the basis for making these kind of updates that Houston doesn't exist in a vacuum? And how did these updates come about? And I think especially when it comes to bicycle facility design in particular, the best practices have changed a lot in a short period of time, as especially in the American context, bicycle facilities have been expanded a lot. And so there are many guiding documents that we look to who have updated their own best practices, the NACDO Street Design Guide being a big one of them. But there are also many other, I mean, the MUTCD was also just updated with improved, that's at FHWA level, and many of our updates in this IDM match the updates that were made in the MUTCD. And then I believe there's also AASHTO, the formerly Green Book, I believe. Again, I'm not an engineer. I just sometimes talk like one, but there are many documentations out there that have updated and improved over time, and these updates reflect those best practices. So our IDM, while it was impressive that we had our Chapter 17 bike-focused design guides in there already, it was definitely time for an update to reflect national best practices as found in places like NACTO.
Hey, Virginia, if I can just add to your comment, I think so. Basically, what you're clarifying is you're basically aligning your local ordinances with federal guidelines and design standards related to how streets are designed for people walking, biking, and driving, which is your AASHTO and FHWA design guidelines. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone who's on the call understands that we are basically aligning local street design guidelines to national standards.
Yep, that's right. We made sure to match those standards, and we were very, very excited to do so. Joe had some more.
Yeah. My understanding of on-street bike parking, like corrals, was that someone would have to go through ARA.
Oh, sure. They need to be involved if there's currently permitted parking on
So
street.
you can't do it, you can't put a bike corral in by right, but there's an application process just like there was prior to these changes.
Especially if that parking is paid parking, then certainly we need to work with Park Houston and our partners at ARA to go through that process. I actually don't know specifically off the top of my head if it's not paid parking, but just currently permitted parking. We'd certainly want to coordinate with them, but I'm not sure if there would be an application process or anything like that to change it if it's not paid parking today.
I have a question about how this IDM changes priorities for existing infrastructure that now might be out of compliance. So for example, if there's an intersection that by these standards should have a leading light that currently doesn't, and we submit that to 311, does that get more priority now or not necessarily?
Well, so the tough part is the city as a whole has a ton of locations that are out of compliance for all sorts of things in the IDM, not just unique to bicycle facilities. So there are places that you are correct that now are going to be out of, that are going to be non-compliant, but we have other non-bikeway things that are currently non-compliant. We have sidewalk things that are currently non-compliant. And so we'll have to address it in the same way that we have funds today and have to prioritize. Now that we have the IDM standards to point to, that is helpful in making the case, but with limited improvement funds for that sort of thing, it'll be the same process that exists today.
Slide 18, what is VLOS?
Yeah, I'll jump back to that. That is vehicle level of service.
Okay.
So what we were highlighting here, though I was focusing on the bike component, there's a much bigger part of this that is just the whole TIA process and everything, the things that we are updating language on regarding the TIA process. But this is highlighting that the multimodal service standards. So here you're only seeing the bike stuff, but there's bus stop stuff, there's pedestrian stuff, there's signal stuff, there's all sorts of things in there. Those are expected to be satisfied first.
Okay.
So before you use our limited roadway right-of-way to satisfy the vehicle level of service. So historically, maybe if you're adding a lot of trips to a location, you would say, well, these trips are going to make the vehicle level of service, which is the score that a street gets for how many cars it can put through in a given time period, right? That if that were decreased to a certain amount, you would need to bring it back to what it was before by doing some engineering treatment, using geometry, using signal, using something to get back. This is often introduction of turn lanes or introduction of like an additional cut in a median or something like that. There's a number of things you can do. And so what we're highlighting here that you brought up is that we have very limited right-of-way, and so we need to use that right-of-way to focus on vulnerable road users and their needs first, which is those multimodal service standards. And then if you still have space left in the right-of-way, then you do your turn lane, then you do the other stuff. Like we still want you to get to the appropriate vehicle level of service to service that location. But historically, it's been done at the expense of those multimodal treatments.
On the new order of operations for the on-street TCPs. Number one, maintain the existing path if possible. Can you talk a little bit about what that, if possible, would entail and what sort of analysis or what have you would be, put into play to figure that out?
That, if possible, is really going to likely be a conversation with the developer about how they're going to be constructing their site. So the if possible is often the way developments are done, they need excess space for like circulation around whatever new is going in. And so that's when you spill into the street. That's when you spill onto the sidewalk. So the if possible will have to be a conversation to determine, can you do your construction work in the space that you have within your own property lines, basically. And then if you need to provide protection, like some kind of scaffolding or something over that pedestrian walkway, do that. That's what we want to see preferred. But there are many construction sites where that's not possible, like the type of crane you need to bring in, where you need to do the loading trucks for the concrete, all this stuff, you need that additional space. And so it'll be that kind of conversation. I'm not sure, I mean, I am not the expert on these things. So we'll see if maybe there is a way to kind of set in stone what that if possible means, but I doubt it. You need to have some flexibility here to work with the
I'm asking because I'm thinking about like, there's a high rise that was just completed via Discovery Green. I think a lot of us are probably familiar with, which is on the Lamar Street bikeway, and then that bikeway was closed for over maybe 2 years or a year and a half at least. So I wonder if that, if possible, entails potentially shifting bikeways out and then closing that area or a shared walk bike right away.
That's what I would call that provide nearby diversion.
Okay.
So if we can do a creative treatment that creates kind of an on-street shared use path that both accommodates the pedestrians as well as people on bikes and takes that space to do that, that would be something that could definitely be that second option as part of this.
Yeah, well, thank you, Virginia.
Thanks, Virginia.
That's incredibly
Pleasure.
great to see all the work you guys have put into. So thank you.
Sure, I'm not gonna lose juice anytime soon. Okay, so I am up next and I will be giving some updates in regards to maintenance and sweeping of our bikeways. So thank you, Chair Trufo, for the lead in during your comments. I don't have a lot of information to share, but I think I have enough to at least talk about what we could possibly do going forward and how the BAC could possibly participate. So as you all are probably aware, we've had some issues maintenance wise with the Space City sweeper and many of the calls to clean our bikeways and our high comfort on-street bikeways have been solved with manual labor, hands and brooms, and then sometimes when they can get through the conventional sweepers. And so our team in Public Works is currently working with the vendor to resolve some of those issues. So that's kind of the update. We're still learning. We're still figuring some stuff out and hoping to engage more with the staff at Public Works about what this means for sweeping and how we can go forward. Like, is it useful? Is it good? What are some courses of action so that we're not just going out there with all hands on deck. And I wanted to mention the 311 calls because of that, because a lot of the 311 calls that were received, those requests were being treated with people actually being out on the ground sweeping. Now, from the report that we got from Houston Public Works from 311, there were 20 calls made related to debris in the bikeways in 2023. Personally, I found that a little low, especially considering how often we talk about sweeping, how often we talk about bikeway maintenance in this venue and others. So just going to put a call out again to, please continue to share, to say that we need debris in the bike. We have debris in the bike lane. We need this to be swept out. We need this to be cleaned because the volume may dictate what happens next. Now, something that is going to help, 311 is finalizing a bikeway specific maintenance category that should be finishing up this spring. If you remember, this is something that we talked about even before I left for that year and a half to go hang out with good old Uncle Sam. And a lot of the delay back then was, making sure that the 311 system as a whole was getting its overhaul. So getting all of the bugs out, making sure that that was working, and staff has continued to work with 311, and now it's ready to go. And I actually received a phone call the other day from some staff over at 311. So they have requested that we provide a kind of FAQ, if you will, for 311 operators. So when people call, and not just about debris in the bike lanes, but if they have any other bikeways related questions, who do they talk to? Who do the calls get forwarded to? Where are they told to be an email? So I'm gonna take the lead on that. I'm gonna ask for Virginia's help to work with me on that, and that's gonna be something that we're gonna provide our colleagues, so that when people are making these calls, they're receiving the right information and they know what to do. And for the sake of conversation, something that I wanted to bring to the infrastructure subcommittee is that I see this as an opportunity for the infrastructure subcommittee to get involved and possibly revisit the maintenance work group. So for context, back in 2020, the BAC formed a maintenance work group through the infrastructure subcommittee, and it was city staff, it was BAC members, other practitioners and other people who are doing maintenance. So, for example, we had people contribute from management districts. We talked to, Lisa's colleagues at Houston Parks Board to talk about how the trails were maintained, to, think about some courses of action that we could do to better sweep bikeways. And at that point, the problem was that the current street sweepers were too wide for our protected on-street facilities. And due to that work, and that collaborative staff work between the BAC and staff out of planning, public works, and everybody else who participated, that was how we ended up procuring the Space City sweeper. So that work led to a staff memo, which got to the hands of city council, and then the decision was made to get the Space City sweep. So now, to be fair, that timeline was almost about 2 years from like initial meetings to it's like we're having the Twitter campaign to name the sweeper. Like it's coming through. So it's one of those things that, as we continue to move forward, it might not be an instant fix, but I wanted to bring that to you all just for consideration, because in the next couple of months, we'll have some data on bikeway related 311 calls. We might have some more information on the sweeper itself. Hopefully, with more 311 calls, we'll also have a good idea of, like geographic region, area. So for example, the Space City sweeper, a lot of the calls were based on Hardy Allegian. So, we were looking for something to fit like those, not just the high comfort facilities we were building, but the ones like that first wave of high comfort facilities. So also know like where the problem is. And also with where the problem is, it might be some opportunities for collaborations with others around the city that do maintenance. So Yeah, I see this as an opportunity for the subcommittee to get involved. Obviously, I would not recommend standing the maintenance working group just yet for two reasons. So one, we are still awaiting the composition of the Bicycle Advisory Committee. And so in April, when we have our meeting for quorum, there will also be the opportunities to join both the education and infrastructure subcommittees. And I don't want to have this conversation twice. And then also like I want the opportunity just for us as staff to, start generating data and at least kind of come with some ideas. So we can come back to you all and with some kind of courses of action that we're thinking about in ways that we can see the BAC and infrastructure subcommittee help.
I know that I'm out of line or whatever, but this is something, I'm meeting next week with Joanna Clark, who took over for Veronica Davis. If y'all have any concrete ideas that would work for maintaining and cleaning the lanes, get the information to me and I will pass it along.
So for context, we will, when we get the maintenance work group together, we'll probably already have some people from her team on the
That's fine. I just didn't know if y'all had anything. Okay, I'm sorry.
I just want to say I finally did see this lucid sweeper in person, riding my bike on the Austin Street bike my way, and it was very exciting. I could testify that it exists.
It's out. Sometimes it's I know it's not optimal, but we got something. So now we're trying to see like how we can build on something.
So we had Lex and then Tom and Leah.
I just wanted to highlight the people on online.
Okay.
Tom, go ahead. Tom
Yeah,
Carlson.
okay, yes, thank you. I had to push the buttons. Yeah, I love this idea, Brian, of standing up the maintenance work group again, and hopefully maybe we can do that at the next infrastructure meeting, if not at the April full BAC meeting. And I understand that you need to collect some data, and I think we've talked about this in the past. One of the data points that'd be nice to have is, how often have we actually been able to get out and, run the sweeper? I know it's had a lot of maintenance issues. And, I think there was a target for how often we would be getting out, and I'm sure we're far short of that. But if you could somehow develop, a record for, okay, we did Hardy, 3 times or whatever. I know you've been given some thought from that. I'm kind of rambling here, but I'm just saying that's among the data that maybe we need to collect once we gear back up on this. And I would suggest maybe it would be, if you think it's doable, Brian, if we could maybe get an updated study done by either the end of this year or early next year, but in time to participate in the budget cycle for next year, just as we did a couple years ago when we bought the first sweeper.
All right, got it noted.
Thanks, Brian.
Leah.
Sorry, I accidentally hit my raise hand. Not me.
So I'll say that I did think of something. Like I know this is really concerning for me because I've been hearing questions about like where's the Space City sweeper after all the campaigning stuff, and bringing this up again and like to the front again in an infrastructure meeting. I look forward to the work group thing. I'm still available. Like I'll still be up for like signing up for this to like figure out what we can do to like boost this up, because I'm probably one of the ones that submit a lot of 311 requests to the Hardy and Legion. So yeah.
Where do you submit those?
311. It's C-click fix, and then it takes them to like the website, like automated AI thing where like what are you gonna do or drainage supporting, and drop your like address or a pin. So if I use a GPS pointers when I drop a pin, I like do it on there. Or and then it just, but then you have to go through the part where you have to like check your email and confirm it. Like that's the main thing right there. Maybe more people do it, doesn't really get completed because they don't finish that last part where it submits it. But yes, look forward to it. Hopefully we can get more people convinced that, bike lanes are a feasible way of getting around. And now that the people are, like, the city is serious about cleaning them, then support them.
So and to your point about going through the process. So Leah, I'm not gonna put you on the spot, but I think after the changes are made to 311, I think that would be a perfect opportunity for the education subcommittee to help us out with some materials and some kind of campaign just to spread the word to bicyclists about, hey, here's the new way of doing things, and here's the way, here's how you make sure you close the loop.
I don't usually mind being put on the spot, Brian, so I think that sounds great. I would love for that to be, I don't know the exact timeline you said, but as soon as that sort of happens with 311, I'd love to get that on our agenda and figure out what kind of education we want to put out there as a group for that new switch.
Awesome. Well, if there are no other questions, that's all I have.
Yeah, please continue.
All right, so now we'll go to Brian Dotson. So Brian Dotson has two presentations. First is the SBIF request presentations. Mr. Dotson, while you're giving the presentation, at some point, just kind of pause. I'll give some staff context. I know we talked a little bit about that earlier, I have some things that I can just bring to the subcommittee as well, just during the presentation, just like, for example, the updated letters of support and whatnot. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay, if you go to the first slide, we'll hit the punchline first, and that is we've got two projects where we need matching funds for the Places for People Precinct 4 program, and asking for a total of a pledge from the BAC of $75,000 in total, of which 25 would be for the Cullen Park path, and 50,000 would be for the Piping Rock connection. It's important to note that this would, we don't know that Precinct 4 would approve these projects. We also don't know if we're going to be able to, particularly Piping Rock is challenging on gathering the 20% local match. It's really just a pledge that if the projects are not either applied for or not accepted in about August is when we expect they will announce, then, money's not spent, okay? The fiscal year spend would probably be 2025 if the projects are move forward by Precinct 4. Essentially, I got a little chart there. If both projects are approved, then come October BAC meeting, you got 97,000 left in your strategic account, assuming there's no money added. That all gets that bike plan is no longer funded, beginning next year. And then if your current balance is about 172,000. So with that, Brian, I'll pause and let you say anything you need to say about the fund.
Brian, you're muted.
Thank you,
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I was trying to cut down on the chatter because we still got the door propped open. I see a comment from David Dick, asking about can the regular street sweepers be deployed to clean bike lanes? Just to address that real quick, most of the time it is no, because our traditional street sweepers are wide enough for the streets themselves, like our regular right of way. So just, for example, like you can't get, a lot of those larger trucks within the bike lane without damaging something.
And that's a
simply for the-
bi-directional lane.
The bi-directional lane, they might. Some of the bi-directional lanes, they probably can, but not all of them. So that's why we requested the smaller sweeper that we know could go through even just the protected one-way lanes. But for the strategic, going back to the strategic bikeways, one of the things that was kind of came through discussions of the BAC back in, was it 2022? It was to, one, get more community input in the bikeways, and then also, like, are there quick fix or easier projects that, might not be a lot of money, but you get a better bang for your buck out of them. So the strategic bikeways fund was kind of brought out of that, so that 10% of the bikeway dollars, there would be conversations with the BAC, and the BAC would be that venue to smell test projects to see, hey, is this going to be worth it? So with, discussion and deliberation in the infrastructure subcommittee, and then also a vote of concurrence during a BAC meeting for quorum that these are good projects, then that ignites the staff work to look at using bikeways money for these, as opposed to all of the bikeways money going towards our major corridor projects. So just giving additional context. And then I can also, I can do with the letters of support and stuff after you talked about the corridors and things like that, Brian.
Okay, so if you go to the next slide, just the big picture is that these are two major connections. The D one is the Cullen Park path. The part of it is already funded with TxDOT. So this is going to be the second part of that. Big connection across I-10 from basically Barker to Haddix. And then F, also a big connection because it gets you down to a quiet street that then connects to Braze. So let's go to the next slide. We'll talk very quickly about the two individual projects. Cullen Park Path, been trying to get this done since 2003. Okay, this effort started in 2003. Okay, we got Greg got a funding for it, and then it just wasn't built. I had a fatality in 2019 right there where those people are walking, and that with TxDOT HSIP is going to provide the funding for segment 1. So the part that we're trying to get funding for now is segment 2 to get up to basically at Psalms Road. You've got Cullen Park and a lot of connections out from Cullen Park. So that's the big picture on Cullen Park Path. Next slide. So basically, been talking to the local community. They've got a bunch of safety issues and parking issues, and so they're comfortable with basically going in with a bike lane on that street. This is in one of the things about places for people, you got to come over with this 20% match. And places like this are in what, no man's land. They don't have a TERS, they don't have a management district. This one at least has some muds around it. because it sort of sticks out into unincorporated Harris County. And we think we can get the MUDs. The MUDs have already provided about 120,000, and we have about 90,000 left. And we think the MUDs are going to come through with quite a bit of the funding. But we also need to be able to demonstrate the city of Houston is bought into this. So I'll pause real. Let's see, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I'll just keep moving. So I know you're short on time. Next slide is piping rock. This is at Piping Rock. This is what it looks like. There's people going up and down there now. The alternative is the shoulder of Highway 6. In this segment, we had it was like 7 casualties in the 3-year period for that would have applied for HSUP, basically 2020, 21, 21, 22, 23 had 7 casualties, a couple fatalities out on Highway 6, and there is no other choice. You know, you either get on the shoulder Highway 6, or you come over and get on this. So that's what it looks. That's where the trail would go right there. If you go to the next slide, just a kind of a big picture of it. It is pretty easy trail building. I've talked to the Corps of Engineers. Of course, they've got a long process to do it, but this is like the easiest trail construction in Harris County in terms of execution. So on this one, we're asking for 50,000. We need about 100,000. I'm still trying to figure out a way to find it. There's a liquor store that I've got my eye on, but don't tell anybody. And we're looking for at least 50,000 to get this going. Very important connection between basically Buffalo Bayou drainage and Brace Bayou drainage. So I'll shut up and answer any questions.
So one thing that I wanted to add just information on support for these projects. So as of 11 a.m. today, so I did acknowledge everybody who sent letters in before 5 p.m. yesterday. We did have some public comments from people who did send them later. I did acknowledge them, and I've saved them. But of course, I got to come in and set up the room and things like that. So as of 11 a.m., we received 9 letters in support of Cullen Park Path and 13 letters in support of Piping Rock. Now, obviously, after I go back to my inbox, I may receive a few more, especially from some of the folks who have talked today. And I think there might have been 1 or 2 in my inbox as I was leaving my office. So, and of course, the caveat is that in the event that we do, push forward with this, there would be some, additional community engagement, around these projects. And then I also wanted to acknowledge that there is some staff to staff coordination around Cullen Park. So we've been receiving some information from there's currently an inquiry with Houston Public Works on the application process that was brought forward by one of our council members. So there's some staff to staff coordination, and there's some interest in Cullen Park that we are also working on the back end outside of the BAC meeting. And a lot of that is due to, Brian engaging on multiple fronts. So this is, one audience that he's presenting in front of, but it's not exclusive to BAC.
We've got Leah.
So Leah and Tom.
Yeah, thank you. Brian, a question on this current map, the extension. The yellow line currently doesn't show it extending to the intersection. at Highway 6 and Piping Rock? Is the intention for it to go all the way to that intersection? And then my second conversation or second question relates to the engagement within that neighborhood where the words Piping Rock are kind of at that northeast corner. What you're hearing from community members in that neighborhood.
Appears frozen.
Brian, are
Did
you
I
still
freeze
with
or did
us?
Brian freeze?
I think,
Okay.
I think he might have froze. But I know,
Okay. What were you gonna say, Brian?
so we've got just some. Oh, too late to submit a letter of support? Absolutely not. So we haven't really picked this up yet. So this is very early. So if you would like to show support, you can always send me an email. My email is briand as in Delta .smith@houstontx.gov. And then you can also send letters to the BAC's email address, BAC@houstontx.gov, because guess who reads those? This guy. Tom?
Yeah, thank you. Leah, I can answer your first question. Essentially, the trail would, go along the side of the reservoir on the east side from the drainage there. And then where you see it take that kind of left turn at the south end there, that would just stop there at that street. And I think it is called Piping Rock. And then you would go on street to cross Highway 6 and continue on street. And there's no infrastructure that Brian is proposing here beyond what you see here, but essentially you would make your way through the neighborhood streets to get down to Brays Bayou.
Thank you. I just that particular intersection I'm familiar with. So the concerned about that connection from where the yellow line ends to Highway 6.
Right.
That whole intersection is awful. And so there's a little bit of like, if we're not going to go all the way, it makes me a little nervous about dumping people into that roadway.
Yeah, I think this is one of those art of the doable kind of things. So, although I won't steal Brian's thunder on that. I'll let him speak to that. I'd had some discussions with Brian Dodson on this earlier, and one of the concerns we had when he'd raised this, I think it was, I can't remember which meeting, but anyway, was tying up strategic investment funds for an indefinite amount of time, waiting for the match to come in. And Brian mentioned today that he expects a decision to be made by August of this year. I would think if we do support, and I do support, I think both of these are great ideas, but I don't want to have our funds tied up and, beyond, for an indefinite period. So I think we should put a limit on that. And, whether that's September, I just don't want it hanging out there. So whatever we recommend to go to the full committee, I would recommend that we put, an end date on it.
Brian Dodson, are you back in the meeting? No. Okay.
I know he was having some technical difficulties.
So maybe something I can bring up while we wait for him to off different topic, but I don't think it'll take too much time to give him a chance to come back. Bike racks at the annex building. We've been talking about those for a while. I don't know if there were any updates for that.
No, not at this time. To be honest, it wasn't as high of a priority as some of the other stuff that,
Sure.
The BAC has brought, and some of the other things that we have going on. And that's not to say that we can't revisit it.
Right.
We just haven't got to it yet.
Okay.
But please keep reminding us about it, because, like, it's
Kind of like getting
It's
off in the
helpful.
weeds and stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
so,
He's back in.
so Brian, you back? All right. Love technology.
You're on mute.
So Brian, you got us? Oh, you're still on mute. See if you can unmute. Yeah. Okay, so so hopefully you can hear us, Brian. So one of the things that Tom brought up was not wanting the strategic funds to be tied up for an extended period of time. And he did say that you were expecting to hear some answers about some other funds for the match by August. Is that still the case? Still working it. Text him or something. Yeah.
I did. He said he's trying to.
Okay.
If I could chime in at this
Yeah.
moment, I'll just say a couple comments and a question for Brian. So first, thank you, Brian, for pulling together so much support for this. I think 20 comments or something like that, all in. And thank you for bringing more context and history. We've heard about this proposal or a piece of this proposal before. I think the desire line photo that you brought is really compelling. And this overall seems like an advantageous place to be putting in trails, especially given Precinct 4's enthusiasm.
Yes.
This kind of project. My question for you, Brian, if you are able to unmute or maybe just pop it in the chat if it's an easy enough thing to type in. Why asphalt? Because given what at least from my understanding of asphalt in our loamy clay soil, is that asphalt doesn't fare as well or last as long. But maybe you know more about the, whatever, I'm not an engineer, what's underneath the ground here, that would support asphalt, or maybe asphalt is a better choice for this for some particular reason.
And I had the same question, Joe, and I guess maybe that's a detail that can be left to Precinct 4 to work through in their engineering for the trail. I guess what I'd like to suggest, if we can't get Brian back, Brian Smith, what's the mechanics here? Do we just need to, as the infrastructure subcommittee, make a recommendation to the BAC that we support the commitment of this funding up to a certain date?
Yes, that's my interpretation of how we've done this process. I would recommend October.
Okay.
And here's why. So if the infrastructure subcommittee makes the recommendation to bring this to the BAC and the BAC votes on it in April, then October's BAC meeting is the opportunity to vote to take it away. And then also that gives us roughly a quarter, within FY25. And then that allows for, just staff to, work this, incorporate it into the new budget, have a better idea of our FY25 budget and all of that. I think I think that would be a reasonable timeline.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. And it also gives him a little bit of slack, you know, in case things don't get tied up by, you know, the end of August. It gives a couple, you know, months more. So do we need to vote on this here or what? What's the process here?
So I know we don't
Okay.
necessarily do things for quorum in the subcommittee, but I mean, we could, you know, just give the opportunity, just like open it up to the subcommittee. Is anybody in objection? Does anybody have any other questions?
I think
Yeah.
timing matters.
Yeah.
Timing matters for precinct 4's people for places for people application. So, you know, I think if Brian's able to chime in or type something in the chat, if you can corroborate that that's the truth, or if someone who knows more about precinct 4's timing on this, I think the approval from this body to advance it to the full BAC, I think is timely. But I would want somebody else with maybe more knowledge on the application process to corroborate that.
Can we bring that in April? Because I know we've got some public works staff that are looking into it right now that aren't here.
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. In the April full meeting.
Yes.
I don't see why not, but if Brian has further context for that.
And that also doesn't mean that like staff work doesn't start until April.
All right.
I guess you know, so I know there's probably a few things on my list. Well, one, just kind of talking about the strategic bikeways in general and having a better idea about that and stuff that just needs to happen before the April meeting as far as the staff assessment of this.
Yeah. Speaking for myself, I would be comfortable giving the infrastructure subcommittee the opportunity to say that this is ready for the full BAC.
I'm good with that. It's Leah.
Me too.
Third, or fourth now.
All right, is everybody in concurrence? Do you
Yes.
have anybody in opposition?
Yeah, hello, this is Brian. I'm able to get in on the phone, and I have been listening. I have been able to hear. I don't know why I can't, but I think you've got it. You know, if we just say that the infrastructure committee endorses for now, there's a whole lot of other stuff that's got to happen, obviously, but that will let us move forward. Thank you.
If I can add to that, I mean, again, this is purely advisory. Our advancement of this or not does not preclude it from happening, does not force it to happen. This is simply a helpful step in the process, let's say.
Absolutely. And like that kind of goes to the purpose of the strategic fund. It's that, like, is this a good idea? And you know, utilizing you all as that sounding board to know that what we're doing is right. So Brian, I will get with you over the next 2 months. And I'll also continue to, you know, do some staff coordination on our end.
You're talking about strategic funds, you're talking about the 10% reserve that we have to fast track this smaller project.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a way as a committee that we could push them all to a certain meeting where we can see them all together to where we could go and prioritize them, and preferably it would be all of the above?
Yeah, so
funds.
yeah, absolutely. So as of right now, the only projects that have utilized the strategic funds were the ones that we've shown a few times. The shared lane on Main Street, and then there's a connection to, I think, White Oak Bayou.
The Heritage Trail.
Heritage Trail.
And the refuge island.
That's the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are the only ones that have been approved so far. So this would be, you know, kind of the next one. We don't really have a queue of other projects. And I think as we you know, continue to do staff work on one of the things that I want to do, since I've been I'm relatively new to the strategic bikeways because I think I was included in some of the conversations with, you know, the BAC and David before I left, but I think the first presentation was literally like my first week. Actually in this picture. So I was hanging out right here at the National Guard Armory. And I have run this and it is not fun.
So you created that desire path with your own 2 feet.
I know some people who contributed to it, I tell you that. Um, yeah, so one of the things that I would like to do is just um like refine the process, and then have a better idea of the process and learn more about the staff work that goes into the strategic bikeways going forward. But yeah, if everybody is in concurrence, that is awesome. And we'll continue to work. So appreciate you, Brian. Thank you for your persistence and continuing to get more information to the infrastructure subcommittee and the BAC. And we're about 10 minutes left, so we're almost done. For the sake of time, Brian, I know we've got the post appraisal. You got sound?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm back. Microsoft gods smiled on me for a few moments. So, yeah, I tell you, we do this real quickly. But I can't see, for some reason, I can't see slides. So I'm going to assume that you're on the first slide of the post appraisal. Essentially, we had some people using it. Ian Johnson, when I've been up and down it, Ian Johnson's been up and down it. Really, it looks good. It seems to work pretty good. The concrete's better than the armadillos. The bus stop, one of the bus stops didn't come out real good. Because basically the barriers in the way of getting on the bus, and I understand that all this stuff gets handled in the infrastructure design manual, although it doesn't, because a lot of this stuff is you got to go out there and look at it, right? And so just trying to make awareness that there's these little details that a lot of times what you see on the blueprints, you can't see what really happens. The other item is that we did have these curb lips, which aren't so bad in this case because you can basically cut perpendicular, but where we put those on narrower bike facilities, they're they set you up where you have to really slow down, get out in the lane, and make a sharp turn so that you don't tumble when you go across them. So that's it. Just we try to I try to go out and look at some stuff, and when it gets built, and maybe we can continue to improve. Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Hey, can I just
Yeah.
maybe this question for Virginia, I'm not sure. Is there, I mean, the curb cut lips that I've seen in other places too, it varies the height. I've seen someone take a nasty spill as a result. I wonder if there's a way to fix, like grind them down. Is there a method that the city uses for that?
So I don't know about fixing them. I know that there's a range that is allowed as standard. It's one of those standard details that's out there. And maybe these are up on the maximum of that range. So one, reviewing that to see what changes need to be made. Review cycle to that standard detail is one path. As far as this project, since it's very recent completion, I mean, I would have to follow up with other public works staff to see what can be done here. If it has not formally completed, there may be opportunities that there's still crew available to make modifications.
but I actually don't know the status of this one and if it's done, or if it's still got a few things to fix. So there may be an opportunity if it's not.
Okay. And follow-up question to that, I'm not sure if anyone in the room can answer this, but these things, if they're a hazard, they can be reported to 311, I assume?
They can be, but there's no dedicated item for that. 311 really focuses on the stuff in roadway. Fixing driveway aprons is not something that 311 generally considers. In fact, generally outside of roadway projects that do rebuilds like this, those driveway aprons, we would expect a property owner to maintain.
Oh, okay.
In the same way that they maintain the sidewalk, right, that it's access to their property. So again, as for if it is engineering, if it is possible to grind down an edge, I really do not want to suggest that I know that that is possible. That may impact the concrete in some way that it's not acceptable. But I think I can certainly follow up here and see what the status of construction is and if they've closed it out or are still opportunities to review. Certainly that bus stop is something we'd like to take a look at.
Thank you. We've got a hand, Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, this is Mike Van Dusen. That's happens to be in the super neighborhood that I was president of for quite a while. I've been tracking this project for probably about 6 years. To my knowledge, it's pretty well complete. And pretty well liked by the residents there.
Awesome. And then acknowledging your comment, David, about liking the Shepherd Durham bike trails. And then looking at the end, I know there are some other projects that will eventually connect northbound, and then also some corridor studies near there as well that might look at potentially improving those connections. For the sake of time, if it's all right with the chair, can we forego or open forum and then go to the announcements?
Unless there's a strong opposition, I'd be okay with it.
Just one remark, that's something that was brought up earlier today, the development that Discovery Green that put up the temporary bike lane. I'm pretty sure that I heard they were put in funds or make it permanent. So I don't know what the conversation happened with that.
Polk Street?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there were some comments, I think that they did, like, it was part of like the detour that they did because they were closing the bike lane on Lamar.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I heard that they were like willing to make it permanent after construction was done or something like that. So I don't know what happened to that conversation or if you heard anything from them. Okay. Okay. Something to put a visit later on or something. Okay.
I don't see the heads, so.
All right. So announcements and events. Third Ward on tap, as already mentioned in Mr. Pettit's public comments. So here's the information. Everybody's meeting at CUNY Homes. Please show up, show your support. In the slides, you'll actually be able to use the QR code. It's a little bit larger when you have it on your screen. Next, so TERS 12, they're having a public meeting about their mobility plan. If you can show up, it's Tuesday, March 5th at Lifebrook Church. They also do have an engagement website that you can click and use that as a way to participate. Tour to Houston. Tour to Houston is back. We don't have a lot of details, but we do have a date. So as of right now, April 7th is the date. More details to be determined. Please check our websites, check the city's website for information on registration and activities around that weekend. And not listed, but tentatively, Bike to Work Day is May 17th. We're still staffing that and looking at what that is going to look like. So just be patient with us. We are having, quite a bit of a distribution of labor. So Bike to Work Day may be a little bit different than what we've done last year, for example. But we will have, some more information in the weeks to come, and might look at giving an update probably during the education subcommittee meeting. That might be a good venue because it'll be about a month and a half, 2 months out before. So next meetings, education subcommittee is March 27th. The bicycle advisory committee meeting for quorum is April 24th. I will also give the reminder that since this will be our first meeting with our newly appointed and reappointed committee members, group photo. So if you can come out in person in April, please come out in person in April, so we can have a photo of the BAC. And then our infrastructure subcommittee meeting is scheduled for May 22nd. And I also want to highlight the infrastructure subcommittee meeting because that is going to be a significant meeting because I'm planning to start the bikeways prioritization exercise again. So something that I've been bringing up through my leadership is it's been 3 years since we did the priority bikeways. And through the priority bikeways and through the work that we did with the help of Public Works, with the help of my counterparts that work in Vision Zero and things like that, we had a pretty good qualitative and quantitative analysis with the help of GIS on some of those larger corridors that that seem to be more in need than everything else. Because if you notice, we still got about 1,300 or so miles of the network to build in order to complete the bike plan. I'm happy to say that all of those main corridors have some kind of project, have some kind of programming, even if it's just a study, because some of this is still at the study phase to look and see what we're going to do. So the work that we do here matters. And I want to initiate that next wave of prioritization, hopefully in May. And other than that, we are all done.
We don't need a motion to adjourn, so we are adjourned then.
All right, appreciate you all for coming out. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
West anything?
I just came
Just that?
last week. And then end of March.
The weather must be great.
Yes. For Dale, so.
Yeah, no, we have each other.
Yeah.
My in-laws. You guys want to see this there?
Yeah. Next time you head out west, I'll make you a list. One of my favorite.
Yeah.
Still figure this. Under these rules, what the intersection of
Yeah, also know good
Lamar and Gallup there have